We started learning the words of my perfect teacher from the prayers to the gurus in the prologue. Yesterday's class covered the prayers in which Patrul Rinpoche supplicated the lineage holders of the three lineages, Venerable Longchenpa and Rigdzin Jigme Lingpa. Today's class starts with learning the prayer to his one and only root guru, Jigme Gyalwai Nyugu. Homage to Jigme Gyalwai Nyugu. You were Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara in the form of a spiritual teacher. Through hearing your teachings, one was guided onto the path to liberation. You engaged in limitless activities to suit the needs of sentient beings. To my root lama of immense kindness, I pay homage. As it says in the historical record and prophecy, Jigme Gyalwai Nyugu was Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara in the form of a qualified teacher who appeared in this world to benefit all beings. Thus, he is regarded as an emanation of Avalokiteshvara. It is recorded in revealed treasures, termas, sutras, and shastras that any sentient being who has a direct or indirect positive affinity with Jigme Gyalwai Nyugu will enter the path of liberation and be reborn in the Pure Land. Meanwhile, he delivered beings according to their differences in capacity, motivation, and disposition. Jigme Gyalwai Nyugu's Dharma activities were vast, and now his lineage disciples are everywhere. Before his supreme root guru of threefold kindness, the author prostrates with body, speech, and mind in uncontrived faith. At the age of 19, Jigme Gyalwai Nyugu became a disciple of Rigdzin Jigme Lingpa and received empowerment and pith instructions on the great perfection from his guru. Later, he went to Zachuka and practiced in retreat at a place called Sachal Melong for 21 years. Jigme Gyalwai Nyugu recognized Rigpa, the innermost nature of the mind. He attained full realization of the great perfection and was regarded as a great enlightened master. His disciples were as numerous as stars, the most remarkable of whom were his two main disciples, Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo and Patrul Rinpoche, who are like the sun and the moon respectively. Patrul Rinpoche followed Jigme Gyalwai Nyugu for long periods, and through guru devotion, he attained all the great qualities of his guru's mind. Thus, Patrul Rinpoche's one and only root guru was Jigme Gyalwai Nyugu. In Tibet, Jigme Gyalwai Nyugu is not as renowned as Patrul Rinpoche. Nevertheless, if later practitioners hear about Jigme Gyalwai Nyugu's name and study his teachings, they will naturally receive extraordinary blessings and eventually achieve experience, realization, or even the state of Vidyadhara. Later in his life, Jigme Gyalwai Nyugu built the Zagya Monastery, Zagyelgan, at Sershul. Prior to his parinirvana, he gave his nails to Patrul Rinpoche and said, "You will build a statue of me at the Zagya Monastery and put my nails inside for its consecration. This statue will be inseparable from me." This statue has now become the pilgrimage spot for numerous Buddhist devotees. His lineage descendants are numerous, scattered in Lhasa, Amdo, Qinghai, Kham, Sichuan, and more. Many of them renounced this life and practiced in a quiet place, and eventually attained the state of Vidyadhara. Therefore, we should pray to the lineage gurus with uncontrived faith and fervent veneration. If you don't yet have any specific prayers to recite, you may use the homage verses that Patrul Rinpoche put in the prologue of the words of my perfect teacher. Many eminent masters of Tibetan Buddhism would chant these prayers to supplicate the lineage gurus at the very beginning of their Dharma teachings. Patrul Rinpoche studied with many teachers, but here he mainly supplicates several of his foremost gurus who brought remarkable contributions to Buddhism and humanity through their vast Dharma activities. These contributions include their monumental written works and enlightened disciples. Anyone who knows a little history of Tibetan Buddhism is aware of the great achievements of these gurus. However, few people truly know the history of these gurus. When historical figures are introduced at school, the teacher simply describes when and how they were born, when they died, how many works they composed, etc. Such introducing is entirely scholarly. I've read some Dharma masters' biographies in which the authors barely delve into any of the master's inner spiritual achievement and realization, but instead merely include the outer details, including age, time, political background, and life stories. As Buddhists, we are definitely interested in extrinsic information, such as the historical background of our gurus, but most importantly, we should learn about their spiritual path and seek to attain their realization. This is very important for every practitioner. 5. The abstract of the whole text. The entire Buddha's teachings are transmitted through the works of Longchenpa and his lineage, the innermost essence of the pith instructions that yields Buddhahood in one lifetime. The outer, inner, ordinary, and extraordinary preliminary practices of the path, together with the additional instruction on the swift path of transference. This guide encompasses the essence of Buddha's 84,000 teachings. Combining the scholarly or Pandita's approach and the practical or yogi's approach, this text comprises the teachings in the monumental works of two omniscient masters, Longchenpa's Finding Rest in the Nature of the Mind and Jigme Lingpa's Treasury of Precious Qualities. Therefore, the text is full of quintessential pith instructions that can bring Buddhahood in a single lifetime if one practices accordingly. The text consists of 3 parts. Part 1 is the ordinary or common preliminaries. Part 2 is the extraordinary or uncommon preliminaries. And Part 3 is the swift path of transference. The Words of My Perfect Teacher comprises quintessential pith instructions from the works of Longchenpa and Jigme Lingpa. One example is Longchenpa's Finding Rest in the Nature of Mind, which many of you have studied. In his The Golden Key to Pith Instructions, Patrul Rinpoche praises this work of Longchenpa, saying, "It unerringly contains the entire teachings of various schools of Buddhism. Such a remarkable composition is never before seen." Patrul Rinpoche continued, "All the teachings of the 9 vehicles are within the text." Finding Rest in the Nature of the Mind covers all the essential teachings of the 9 vehicles, so this work of Longchenpa is of utmost supremacy. I go through the text whenever I am free and feel very blissful while reading it. However, many people nowadays are deeply entrapped by their karmas and are reluctant to read sanctified works of spiritual blessings. Instead, they gravitate toward works of discursive thoughts, such as novels. They regard them as precious and to be cherished. Alas, this phenomenon is not uncommon during the degenerate age. In fact, the works from Longchenpa and Jigme Lingpa are of utmost profundity, and all the quintessential pith instructions from these works are compiled in the Words of My Perfect Teacher. So, this text from Patrul Rinpoche encompasses the essence of Buddha's teachings and provides a pivotal outline of the Dharma. It can bring perfect Buddhahood in a single lifetime. Please make sure you do not think this way. This text is on preliminary practice, so it may not be foremost. Actually, it contains the Buddha's entire teachings and can be regarded as a guide to both the preliminary practice and the main practice. The text consists of 3 parts: the common preliminaries, the uncommon preliminaries, and the swift transference practice. The common preliminaries, also known as ordinary or external preliminaries, include precious human life, the impermanence of life, the defects of samsara, actions, the principle of cause and effect, the benefits of liberation, and how to follow a guru. The uncommon preliminaries, also known as the extraordinary or internal preliminaries, include taking refuge, the foundation stone of all paths, arousing bodhicitta, the root of the great vehicle, meditating and reciting on the teacher as Vajrasattva to cleanse all obscurations, offering the mandala to accumulate merit and wisdom, and Guru Yoga, entranceway for blessings, the ultimate method for arousing the wisdom of realization. The last section includes transference of consciousness, the instructions for the dying, Buddhahood without meditation. It covers 3 types of swift transference practice, a shortcut to enlightenment, which belongs to the main practice of the Supreme Vajrayana. Patrul Rinpoche integrated the works of lineage holders and the oral teachings of his root guru, and with his own wisdom, composed the words of my perfect teacher. This text is like a wish-fulfilling jewel, and if we internalize its content, we can be considered a qualified Buddhist. In Tibetan Buddhism, a Dharma master would instruct a beginning practitioner to start with the words of my perfect teacher. This great tradition is now gradually permeating other areas across the world. Now that you start to build Dharma affinity through studying the words of my perfect teacher, I hope you will share the teachings with others, so more people will understand the basics of Buddhism. Otherwise, many people appear to have taken refuge, to be Vajrayana practitioners, or even worse, claim to have attained enlightenment and possess miraculous power, yet they don't even know the basic doctrines of Buddhism. This is truly disappointing. This kind of behavior is self-deceptive and delusional. Deception is already very widespread nowadays, and it is best not to use Buddhism as a disguise to deceive others. Now that we have attained precious human bodies and the affinity to take refuge in Buddhism, we should be true to the teachings and practice the Dharma impeccably. Of course, without the guidance of qualified teachers and Buddhist scriptures, ordinary people can barely understand the profound Dharma with their discriminative mind and conceptual thoughts. Therefore, we must follow gurus and scriptures that are exalted and blissful. By doing so, our minds will become virtuous, our afflictions will be tamed, and we will become more capable of benefiting others. This text is highly profound and unique, yet clear and easy to understand. It presents the unerring oral instructions of my peerless guru, which I have recalled in my mind and explained unequivocally. Gurus and deities, please grant me your blessings. Here is what Patrul Rinpoche wanted to express in this verse. In writing down the words of my perfect teacher, I have not been guided primarily by aesthetic or literary considerations. I clarify the entire stages of the path in a way that is easy to understand. Although the text is written in plain language, the embedded meaning is immensely profound. The instructions are the unerring oral instructions of my revered guru. I heard the teachings again and again, and composed the text according to my own conviction about the teachings. May the Buddha and gurus bless me so that I may explain the teachings definitively as I have remembered them. These instructions are in plain language that is easy to understand, and even a novice monk can understand them. However, upon meticulous contemplation, their meanings are extremely profound, and even learned Dharma masters, including those holding a Geshe degree, may have difficulties understanding some parts. That means, although the words of my perfect teacher is easy to understand literally, the meaning is very profound. The more we contemplate, the more profound meaning we can derive from it. This is the characteristic of the Vajra speech of an enlightened being. Patrul Rinpoche didn't fabricate the text in a careless manner. He faithfully recorded the oral instructions of his root guru, Jigme Jalwai Nyugu. In the conclusion section of the book, he writes, "This text is not some confection of invented phrases, a cleverly painted rainbow of fanciful words by some erudite expert superficially versed in complex texts, having nothing to do with the words of my kind teacher. Therefore, the whole text is from Jigme Jalwai Nyugu's unerring oral instructions." Patrul Rinpoche listened to the teachings 25 times before compiling the instructions into the words of my perfect teacher. Eminent masters of the past had a very different attitude than us with regard to hearing Dharma teachings. Nowadays, some people feel impatient after listening to the same teaching 3 or 4 times, let alone 25 times. They say, "How come we have to study the words of my perfect teacher again?" This is not the right attitude. You may have read through the text, yet you may not have fully understood the meaning. Therefore, it is still very necessary to hear the teachings again and again. In 2002, in Xiamen, when I had just finished translating the great biography of Buddha Shakyamuni, I met a professor from Xiamen University at Buddhist College of Minnan. We had a long conversation and covered topics related to the Dharma and worldly dharmas, including the convergence between quantum physics and Buddhism. The professor exclaimed, "It is very important to build a solid foundation for Dharma practice under the guidance of the words of my perfect teacher." Even Patrul Rinpoche had to hear the teachings from his guru 25 times, let alone ordinary practitioners like us. I have read the text 5 or 6 times, but I feel it is far from being enough. I vow to read through the text every year. Many years have passed. I don't know whether he indeed has read the text every year. If I had his telephone number, I would like to call him to find out. University professors often appear overconfident and have a strong sense of intellectual superiority. Nevertheless, he was very wise to show increased appreciation every time he read the words of my perfect teacher. Unlike him, many people put the book aside after reading it only once. We shouldn't get tired of studying the Dharma or feel it's enough to study only one Buddhist scripture. Some time ago, someone said, "I've studied the way of the Bodhisattva and Letter to a Friend. Should I study the words of my perfect teacher this time? Would it be too much?" Well, don't you worry. The biography of Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo says this great master studied and received transmissions of more than 700 volumes of scriptures. I was so impressed when I read this. Many people have not studied 70 volumes in their lives, let alone 700. Actually, they might not even have completed the transmissions of 7 books, let alone 70. After learning only 1 or 2 Buddhist scriptures, some people feel they've studied enough. This is not a right attitude to have. Buddhist students should cultivate a strong desire to acquire the Dharma and not be satisfied with less. But when it comes to worldly desires, be satisfied with less. For example, having 1 residence is enough, and there is no need for more. As for Dharma, more is better. It is not enough to study just 1 book, study 1 more. Not enough to listen to a Dharma teaching just once, listen to it again. Not enough to complete 1 round of 500,000 repetitions of preliminaries, do a 2nd round, a 3rd, a 4th. Of course, while practicing preliminaries, we cannot only work on the 500,000 repetitions of uncommon preliminaries. A Dharma master once said, "It is easier to practice the uncommon preliminaries. It can be done in a very short period of time, so it's nothing challenging. The most challenging part is the practice of the 4 common preliminaries. One must devote a significant amount of time to these practices." This master considered the uncommon preliminaries very easy to practice, yet many practitioners nowadays think that doing 100,000 prostrations is already a very demanding mission. This attitude is an indication that the practitioners are not mentally strong enough. If their will is strong, they will not mind how much time and energy they spend eradicating the 3 poisons of greed, anger, and ignorance. The instructions in the text are faithful records of Jigme Gyalwai Nyugu's supreme oral teachings. Patrul Rinpoche listened to the teachings again and again and attained solid conviction. He then wrote down everything, including his own spiritual experiences and the pith instructions. This is how the words of my perfect teacher was brought into existence. As practitioners of later generations, we should also firmly keep in mind the words of our own gurus. I mentioned before that Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche had a disciple from Batang County. He appeared to be a very ordinary monk, but he had been noting down all the daily talks of Phuntsok Rinpoche for more than 10 years, including jokes and criticism of his disciples. Last year was the 3rd anniversary of the great Jigme Phuntsok's parinirvana. This disciple compiled his notes into a book. Everybody considered this book very precious. When Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche was still with us, we didn't reflect too much on many of his words. We took them for granted because these were words and criticisms that we heard from our guru every day. But after the great Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche left us, after meticulous contemplation of his words, we began to see the extraordinary secret meanings of even his seemingly very ordinary words. We felt these words could not have been spoken by any ordinary person. In the same manner, Patrul Rinpoche faithfully noted down the words of his guru Jigme Jalwai Nyugu, including the quoted verses of Indian and Tibetan eminent masters. While composing this text, Patrul Rinpoche prayed to his root guru, lineage holders, deities, dakinis, and Dharma protectors for blessings, wishing the text would be passed down to future generations and benefit innumerable beings. With his prayers and aspiration, the words of my perfect teacher is endowed with incredible blessings. Many people had their lives transformed in a short period of time after reading it. Many of you here in class have also found solutions in this text to the big questions of worldly affairs in this life and of spiritual liberation in the many lives yet to come. Through the blessings of the lineage holders, you are able to cultivate the untainted spiritual treasures in your mind. I always believe that praying to lineage gurus is particularly important while studying the Dharma. Once the guru's blessings have infiltrated our mind, whichever text we are studying and practicing upon, and whichever Dharma activity we are engaging in, we will find achievement comes easier to us. Otherwise, many things seem insurmountable. Hence, we should often pray to our lineage gurus, wishing that their great compassion, wisdom, and extraordinary power to benefit beings will all merge into our own minds, so that in the future we can be like them and also have the extraordinary capacities to benefit all beings. This is all we should pray for. We don't pray for the temporary happiness of the realms of gods and men. For example, we don't seek blessings for living longer or for getting full pensions after retirement. The only thing we pray for is to benefit all beings. Even if this is at the cost of our own lives, we won't regress or withdraw. May I have the power to benefit beings in this life and many lives to come. May I have the courage to deliver all beings. This is the aspiration of a bodhisattva. This concludes the teachings on the prayer verses in the prologue, essential points of daily meditation retreat. Many of you are now practicing the outer or common preliminaries in the words of my perfect teacher. Before you embark on the actual practice, I'd like to briefly describe the essential points of Dharma practice. These points are applicable to the common preliminaries as well as the uncommon ones. They are the essential instructions of Patrul Rinpoche and Khenpo Ngawang Pelzan and have been my own practice guidelines throughout the years. It is my hope that after today's teaching, you will all gain mastery in the guidelines and continue to follow them for the rest of your life. Many people nowadays engage in exercises such as yoga or martial arts for the purpose of retaining health or curing illnesses. Unlike them, what we are practicing here by following the instruction guidelines is driven by a very different motive. In my case, ever since I started following the great Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche, I have been practicing according to these essential points. May you also practice like this in the years to come. The following introduces the practices one performs in a daily retreat, which is what one does from morning until night, including sitting meditation and post-meditation. Practitioners can complete formal sitting meditation sessions 2, 3, 4, 6 times a day, given their own situations. Even if you cannot find time for 6 formal sessions, you should strive to complete at least one in the morning or evening. One of my former classmates is a very busy, high-ranking official in the government, but she has managed to practice one session in the evening without interruption for 6 or 7 years. Faith plays a very important role in your practice. As long as you have established faith, you can always find time and conditions to practice Dharma. With faith, even serving jail time cannot stop one from attaining the rainbow body, as shown by many great eminent masters of the past. These days, we often hear complaints like, "I just don't have the freedom to practice. My family is not supportive." But no matter how meager your freedom is, it cannot be worse than that of a prisoner. If a prisoner can manage to practice Dharma, why cannot you spare time for practice? So please, no matter how tight your schedule is, at least try your very best to spare time for one sitting meditation per day. This minimal requirement also applies to Sangha members who staff at Larungar. If one cannot even squeeze out 30 minutes for sitting meditation, one may as well have already been reborn among the realms devoid of leisure. The following is a brief introduction to daily practice. In general, the Longchen Nyingtik lineage places strong emphasis on formal sitting meditation, which is carried out during the 3 daily periods of morning, daytime, and evening. In the morning, visualize first that all Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and lineage masters are playing Vajra bells and Damaru drums, awakening you from the sleep of ignorance and confusion. As you wake up, immediately chant Lama Chenno, calling your guru's kind attention to you, or recite the 100-syllable mantra 21 times. Then sit up in bed for a while and reflect upon your dreams from the night. Were they virtuous or non-virtuous? If you had non-virtuous dreams, it is your karmic responsibility. If you had virtuous ones, rejoice and dedicate the merit. After getting up from the bed, prostrate at least 3 times. Then do your morning routines, including washing your face, brushing your teeth, and going to the bathroom. Afterward, clean up the shrine room and offer water, incense, and other offerings to the Buddhas. This includes 3 parts: preparation, main practice, and conclusion. First, complete all necessary chores, then close the door and start practicing. According to A Guide to the Words of My Perfect Teacher by Khenpo Ngawang Pelzang, there are 3 essential points. 1. The essential point for the body. Sit on a comfortable cushion, relax your body and mind, and rest. Assume the 7-point posture of the Vairochana. 1. Legs are crossed in the full Vajra posture or half Vajra posture. 2. Hands are placed in the gesture of equanimity below the navel. The right hand is on top of the left, thumbs touching each other. 3. The spine should be straight and still, not tilting to the left or right, nor moving back and forth. It is said in some pith instructions that a straight body leads to a straight channel to an even mind, and an even mind makes awareness arise spontaneously. 4. The neck is slightly bent forward. Do not lean backward, nor skewed to the left or right. 5. Shoulders are stretched apart and relaxed, not closed tight to the chest. 6. The eyes are slightly open, not too wide, gazing softly in the direction of the tip of the nose. 7. The tongue is touching the palate. 2. The essential point for speech. Usually, this term refers to chanting or recitation, but that's not the case here. This point is about breathing, expelling the stale breath 9 times. To expel the stale breath, make a Vajra fist with your right hand and press your fist down on the artery at the base of your right thigh. With your left hand in the 3-pronged Vajra hand gesture, block your left nostril. Blow the stale air out 3 times from your right nostril, imagining that all karma from hatred, accumulated by you and other beings from beginningless time, turns into white vapor that evaporates outside. Next, make a Vajra fist with your left hand and press your fist down on the artery at the base of your left thigh. With your right hand in the 3-pronged Vajra hand gesture, block your right nostril. Blow the stale air out 3 times from your left nostril, imagining that all karma from greed, which you and other beings have accumulated from beginningless time, turns into red vapor that evaporates outside. Finally, make the Vajra fists with both hands and press them down on the artery at the bases of both of your thighs. Blow stale air out 3 times from both your nostrils, imagining that all karma from ignorance, which you and other sentient beings have accumulated from beginningless time, turns into black vapor that evaporates outside. This is the so-called expelling the stale breath 9 times. In some instructions, this is followed by recitation of Sanskrit vowels, Sanskrit consonants, and the mantra of dependent arising. If you have difficulty reciting those, say Om Ahung instead, to purify speech through the 3 Vajra's blessings of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Expelling stale air this way may seem nothing more than an ordinary yoga exercise, but in fact, this process enables us to expel negative emotions of greed, anger, and ignorance from our minds. Just as we clean a bowl before we eat from it, or wash a pail before filling it with clean water, we too rinse dirt from our minds by expelling stale air prior to meditation. 3. The essential point for the mind. This includes 2 aspects: the right attitude and praying to the Guru. 1. The right attitude. It is crucial to examine your attitude or motivation for doing the Dharma practice. If the attitude is neutral, change it into a virtuous one. If it is non-virtuous, renounce it once and for all and prevent it from arising. There are 2 kinds of virtuous attitudes: worldly and transcendent. Worldly virtuous attitudes are those that seek protection from fear, including the desire to alleviate illness or to avoid harm from enemies, and the desire to better one's lot, including wishing for wealth, good health, a good career, beauty, and fame. These are not proper attitudes for practicing the Dharma and should be abandoned. Transcendent virtuous attitudes include those at the levels of Shravaka, Pratyeka Buddha, and Bodhisattva. Among these, the attitudes of Shravaka and Pratyeka Buddha are not to be followed, as they seek only personal liberation by achieving nirvana. What we should solely aim for is the attitude of the Bodhisattva, wishing to benefit limitless sentient beings to be free from suffering and its causes, and to eventually attain perfect Buddhahood. In short, cultivating a correct attitude means we give rise to genuine bodhicitta, completely renouncing ethically neutral thoughts, harmful thoughts, and even worldly virtuous attitudes. 2. Praying to the Guru. Visualize in the space in front of you, about a foot above your head, a precious lion throne and cushions of a lotus with 1,000 petals in full bloom, upon which sits your glorious root Guru. If you have very strong faith in your Guru, visualize them as they appear, similar to the visualization of the great Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche, as described in the Swift Bestowal of Blessings, a Guru Yoga. Otherwise, visualize your Guru in the form of a deity, such as Avalokitesvara, Buddha Shakyamuni, or Padmasambhava. With intense devotion, pray single-mindedly, "Precious Guru, the wisdom embodiment of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions, the wish-fulfilling jewel, I pray to you from the very depths of my heart. Always hold me with your compassion. Grant me your blessings. Bless me that my mind merges completely with the Dharma. May all my confusion and obscuration be eradicated. May I accomplish my goals in practice and attain supreme enlightenment." Specifically, if you are at the stage of meditating on the preciousness of human life, pray, "Precious Guru, whatever is your realization of the preciousness of human life, may the same realization arise in my mind." If you are meditating on impermanence, pray, "Precious Guru, whatever your realization of impermanence is, may it arise in my mind also, right now, at this sitting." With utter respect and earnest devotion, place your hands together, pray continuously, and recite the Guru's prayer for 7 or 21 times. After you are done with prayer, visualize the Guru melting into light and dissolving into you, and your mind becomes indivisible with the wisdom mind of the Guru. Rest in this state for as long as you can without following past thoughts, holding present thoughts, or engaging in future thoughts. Do not cling to anything as much as possible. This concludes the essential points of body, speech, and mind for the preliminary, the preparation for the main practice. Although Guru Yoga may be called a preliminary, it could definitely be performed as a main practice. during which we combine prostration with prayers to the Guru and conclude it by dedication. If you do Guru Yoga as part of your preliminaries instead, you will start your main practice after finishing the Guru Yoga. What is the main practice? It includes meditations on the preciousness of human life, impermanence, and so on. Meditate on these, one by one, following each specific instruction. For instance, yesterday you meditated on the 8 freedoms, and then today you move on to the 10 advantages. By doing so, the conviction will arise in you that it is extremely fortunate to obtain a human birth, free from the sufferings of the realms of hell, hungry ghosts, and animals. You should devote our lives solely to practicing true Dharma unceasingly, until you attain complete enlightenment. These are the pith instructions of Khenpo Ngawang Pelzang. Commentaries compiled by disciple Sangye Dorje, an 80-year-old Nepalese, say one should devote at least 146 days to the meditations from precious human life to arousing bodhicitta. If one practices along with the preliminaries in finding rest in the nature of the mind, at least 100 days are required to complete the 4 common preliminaries, according to many lineage holders' traditions. This time, I urge you to practice the preliminaries. It is not just a whim or a sudden impulse of mine. In all my life, I have very much valued finding rest in the nature of the mind and the words of my perfect teacher. For this reason, 10 years ago, I gave teachings on the meaning instructions on 3 virtues of relaxation in the natural state of the mind and the words of my perfect teacher. Today, I feel exactly the same way. However, there are people who switch from one practice to another, change teachers one after another, or even follow non-Buddhist tradition and start to exercise yoga. The result of their practice is a hodgepodge, a messy mixture. It's quite sad. It is my sincere wish that you will establish your fundamental practices, following them day and night. Here I am sharing with you my own practice. It may strike a chord with some of you, but may not for others. After meditating on one meditative instruction for half an hour or 1 to 2 hours, dedicate to all beings the merit of your practice. Seal the dedication with non-conceptual wisdom. If that is not within your reach yet, simply think, just as all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas perfectly dedicated their merit, so likewise, I perfectly dedicate all my merit. Recite the King of Aspiration prayers, Samantabhadra's Aspiration to Good Actions, or the Prayer of Good Actions in full if you have time. Otherwise, recite the following verses. Emulating the hero Manjushri, Samantabhadra, and all those with knowledge, I too make a perfect dedication of all actions that are positive. In the evening, after you have completed your practice of up to 4 to 6 meditation sessions and put away the offerings to the Buddhas and Dharma protectors, you should prostrate 3 times before you prepare to sleep. Then sit in bed and review thoroughly your practice for the day. If you find you have done well, rejoice and dedicate the merit to all beings. If you find you have fallen short, blame yourself, thinking, other people practice so well every day, yet I'm still doing so poorly, even though I have received many pith instructions from my guru. What a fool I am. Punish yourself sharply, as Khenpo Ngawang Pelzang said, by pinching yourself until it hurts. Then go to sleep. When you go to sleep, assume the lion's posture or sit in meditation pose all night, as some practitioners do. Following the instructions from Longchen Nyingtik masters, we visualize a 4-petal lotus in our heart, into which the Guru dissolves into light. We then fall asleep basking in the infinite light emanating from the Guru. Or, visualize the Guru's brilliant light is illuminating the entire world, and the entire world dissolves into us. And then we ourselves dissolve into the Guru, and the Guru melts away in the Dharma realm. In this state, free of conceptual thoughts, enter the luminous dream. If you have not received the teaching on dream yoga, just fall asleep in the state of non-attachment. Many older generation practitioners start the day by chanting the 100-syllable mantra, or praying to the guru upon waking. During the day, in all of their activities, sitting, walking, lying down, and so forth, their minds never separate from praying to the guru and the three jewels. As night comes, they continue chanting, Lama Chenno, Lama Chenno. They fall asleep in the state of oneness, merging together the guru's wisdom and their own minds. They spend every day like this. Practitioners nowadays, however, are nowhere close. They don't bother to do any contemplation when waking up and spend all day in distractions. When going to sleep, they pass out as if a rock had been tossed onto the bed and immediately begin snoring. Drifting aimlessly day after day, years can slip by in a wink. It's really not the best way to live. That said, we should all strive to be an authentic practitioner by practicing well every day and continuing to live like this for the rest of our life. Wish you always pray to the Guru and the three jewels. Pray that your mind will transform for the better. The omniscient Longchenpa said, unless one has really practiced, even mastering all of the Tripitaka would not be helpful at the time of death. Therefore, when we study the Dharma, we must practice very diligently. I have just transmitted to you the pith instructions from Khenpo Ngawang Pelzang, combined with the teachings from the great Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche, as well as the instructions from Longchen Nyingtik. I have followed this practice for many years. Having done it during the earlier part of my life, certainly I will continue on the same practice in the later part of my life. I never imagined that when I wake up, I can fly here and there at will, and when I go to bed, I can immediately enter the state of a luminous dream. These are impractical things to think about. Neither are they likely to happen. Short of any great accomplishment myself, perhaps I should not say too much. But as you have started the actual practice this year and are likely to do so in the future, I feel I should share my practice instructions with you. I do not consider it a secret, rather it's a practical guide for spiritual advancement. As beginning practitioners, your practice throughout the day is like this. You may find some variations among teachings and thus wonder, for instance, why the color of expelled stale air is described as black in one text and multicolor in another. There's no need to make a big deal out of minor differences. Each teacher interprets things in a slightly different way. I've followed the commentaries on Longchen Nyingtik and also incorporated pith instructions that I received from Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche. There is no need to worry about any seeming contradictions. Please bear in mind that it is essential to begin any of your main practice by practicing Guru Yoga first. Our lineage masters taught that the perfection of all attainment always arises from total devotion and earnest prayer to the Guru. Through Guru Yoga, we call for blessings from the Guru for whatever we are going to meditate on, so its meaning may internalize in our minds. If, on the other hand, we rush into meditation immediately after reciting the refuge prayers, we are veering away from the traditions of the Longchen Nyingtik lineage. I do not have a lot of my own instructions on the main practice to impart to you, but ever since the day I followed my root guru 20-some years ago, I have practiced following the above instructions and nothing else. Other practice instructions given in various books never enticed me to switch my daily practice. Many lineage masters, as well as my own kind gurus, have always stayed with one pith instruction all their lives. I, for one, am doing exactly the same. I hope you will follow the same way too. The teaching given today is very, very important. Please carry it firmly in your mind.